Hello，喂，喂，喂，喂，喂，喂，喂，喂，喂，哦， 喂，hello，hello，hello，喂，喂，嗨，嗨，Yeah, I need check line. That thing is very important and 我觉得我瞎了。
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Oh,
hear you.
okay.
Yeah.
Now it's better. Did you manage to solve your problems or of headphones or?
Yes, maybe it's a net problem, I think.
Okay. But sorry, are you here in Italy or are you in China?
I'm in Italy.
Okay. Good. Well, I've read I downloaded and I read the material that you sent me.
Yes.
As I told you, I think that you made a lot of work. It seems to me that you write a lot of things and so on. The first thing that I would like to tell you is that, in my opinion, but this is not a problem just of yours. This is a problem which is very frequent in Chinese students. You tend to disassemble too much the argument, and probably you tend to use too many arguments in your thesis. The result of this process is that there are some topics that are the title of the single paragraphs of your work that are actually topics that are really huge, that would involve entire bibliographies, entire debates all around the world, and you summarize all these huge matter in very, very few lines. And so you touch very quickly the topic, and then you abandon it in order to switch to another topic. This is, I suggest you to not follow this line, because this is not advisable in a scientific work, because the essence of a scientific work is not flying over a lot of argument and just touching, just saying something about the single arguments, because this is more about divulgation. But the scientific work should go in depth in a specific argument. And every time you raised up the attention about a single argument, you should go very in depth in this argument. I could make an example, for instance. Let's go to your index. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is made actually of 3 pages, from page 16 to page 19.
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see, if you can compare the size of your chapter to the normal chapters of a book, you can understand that a chapter of 3 pages is something ridiculous, because normally a chapter is something of 20 pages, of 30 pages, of 60 pages. Not 3 pages is a paragraph. So I think that you have a problem of the hierarchy of the things that you are saying. But more than this, if we read what you write, we can say, okay, the first paragraph, which is at page 16, the connotation of urban renewal. And the second one, the development of urban reuse. And then China, and then other countries. So it means that you are pretending to treat all the immense topic of the urban renewal in China and all over the world in just 3 pages, leaving 10 rows of text to each one of these subtopics. You can understand that this is not the right attitude for scientific research. This could be good for Wikipedia, for instance. This could be good for a paper essay, not an essay, a paper article, a newspaper article, where you have 2,000 characters, and in 2,000 characters you have to speak about a lot of things. So you must fly very generally over the topics. But in a scientific work, I suggest you to go deeper in the things. Otherwise, it is better not to touch the things in any case. Okay? So I think that you should make up your mind about the hierarchy of the topics in your work. Maybe you could put all the sum of the parts together in order to obtain less chapters, bigger than your original chapters, because nowadays you have 8 chapters.
Yes.
I think that probably you could have 4 chapters, 3 or 4 chapters.
Okay.
And each one could try to include more of the things that you are separating in different chapters in your work. But it is not just a matter of the hierarchical organization of your work. It is more than this, a matter of what you want to say. If there is something which for you is crucial in your reasoning, okay, so you have to speak about that thing and you have to go in depth in that thing. Otherwise,
okay.
you don't speak about that, okay? There is another chapter, for instance, in following, just leave me just one moment because I need to retrieve it. Okay. Okay. Paragraph 2.5, the title is China Types of Industrial Reuse. Okay.
Okay.
China Types of Industrial Reuse is something where I could expect an entire book because the cases of industrial reuse in China are nowadays are so many, so different, so interesting that you could write an entire book, an entire PhD research about this topic. And you are touching the topic in 5 rows of text, 5 lines of text, which says simply nothing. So this is really upsetting, in my opinion. And you should do something in order to make up your mind about your real goal, because you are trying to force within your text too many things. Okay, so I don't suggest you to go to have a so wide site in international debate and so on. I think that you could, first of all, you should understand what is the real goal, the real focus of your work. You are speaking about the Luoyang factory, Luoyang former copper factory. Okay, so what are the relevant parts of international debates that are really useful for you? You don't have to rewrite the entire story of the modern city. Okay, you don't have to rewrite the entire history of the modern former industrial requalification, and so on. You just have to go deeper in the single topics that are really relevant for your work. Okay. Besides this, first of all, I would say that from the general point of view, the layout of your work, I think that you did your work on Microsoft Word. It seems to me you did not use project. Okay, and it is quite weird because you have a problem of distribution of the text in the pages. For instance, in the first page, all the writings are up different alignments and so on. And during the text, for instance, page 19, you have some footnotes, but when I try to find the numbers of the footnotes within the text, they are not written with the small characters, but they are written with the capital side, the capital letters, and so they are not understandable. Just a moment, I share my screen so I can show you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I can imagine that, for instance, here, expanded point 2 means that this is referred to the footnote number 2. But you can understand that if you write expanded point 2, this means nothing. 2 should be written in very small format like this here. Okay, and here thing should be written here with small letter and so on. So this is not understandable at all. Okay. Besides this, it seems to me that you are still not using in a correct way the scientific references, because in some pages you have some references, like in this case, but you have entire parts of your work, like the first part when you introduce your work, that are completely lacking of any scientific reference. And this is a problem because since you cannot, I mean, 1 minute ago, I told you that you should not rewrite the entire history of the city, the entire history of the industrial renovation, and so on. Okay.
Okay.
You can do this, so you can skip all this part. You can allow yourself to skip all this part only because you can use the scientific literature. Okay, so since you don't have to write all these things, you can say, okay, this is the framework of my research. You can describe in very simple terms the framework of your research. And when you do this, you must refer this short resume of the entire framework of your research to an international literature, international debate. In this case, you allow yourself to start not to write anything about these things because you are referring to an external literature. If you do this, just writing some general phrases, they have no meanings. So in this case here, I can understand research hypothesis, but research aims, for instance, when you declare the research aims of a scientific work, you should explain, first of all, what is the state of the art, where the international debate just arrived. And in order to do this, you have to refer to an international leader. You have to cite some reports, some texts that can allow you to describe in very simple terms the international debate. Okay. I go on. Yeah, I think that you have very huge problems of layout. So probably it would be better, in my opinion, to when you finish, you can work on Microsoft Word. When you will finish your work, probably it would be better to switch, for instance, to InDesign in order to obtain the final version of your work, if you can. I don't know, because for instance, here in this page, it is quite weird because you have different alignments. In this case, in some cases, it is aligned at the center. Here, from Bertamauro is written a little bit on the right. Politecnico di Torino is written a little bit on the left. So it gives a bad impression of your work because it seems a work which is not curated at all. And it is a pity because you spend a lot of time in your work. So I wouldn't like that the commission could think that you are not careful in the finalization of your work. Okay.
Okay.
So what I told you for the first thing, in my opinion, is the more important thing, because as you can see, all these super nested list of topics, each one would be a topic which would be good for a book, and instead you are dedicated to it just very few lines, is really upsetting, in my opinion. So you should try to compact your reasoning in less chapters, maybe with more paragraphs, and each paragraph should explain much better what you are saying. In order to do this, probably you should remove some not useful parts of your text.
Okay.
Let's go to the design part, which is the most interesting part, in my opinion. The problem in the first part is that it is completely lacking of picture. It is quite strange because it is explaining the entire debate about the industrial renovation, about the urban regeneration related to these big industries and so on, but you're not using any kind of pictures. This is not advisable, in my opinion. For instance, here you have urban renewal in China. You could explain something about that. Analysis of industrial heritage in context of urban reuse. Okay, in this case, you could use some examples and so on. For instance, this part, chapter 5, the case of industrial heritage reuse. I wouldn't name it like this. In my opinion, it would be better to name it as a kind of a case studies or case study analysis or something like that. But in this case, you are using five case studies that you are using in order to explain this situation and your ideas. This is a very important part because normally the case study analysis is a crucial part in a work like this. And what I would suggest you to do in this kind of work is, first of all, to define a kind of a standard layout for every single case, a kind of a form that you can compile, that you can fill with. For instance, you start all with the name of the factory, the name of the designers, the date of the construction, the date of the renovation, the location, the promoters, public, private ones, and so on. And then you start with a general view and then the plans and so on. And if you can repeat this system with some texts among the different pictures, you can have the text that can be organized in the. If you do like this, and if you repeat the same structures for the single cases of study, you make the different cases comparable and you create a real analysis. Is that clear what I say?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I understand.
Because you
do I need to change the case?
Sorry?
I mean, do I need to change the case?
No. No, I'm not suggesting you to change the cases. You chose these cases because they are important for you. I can believe that they are important. Shanghai oil card, okay, that's good. But what I'm saying is that when you start reading this case analysis, this case study analysis, you have the title, and then you have a text which starts normally. And in order to understand the differences and the characteristics of this case study, you have to read the entire text. This is not the right way to create a case study analysis. The best way to do it is defining a kind of a standard layout for the single case of study, okay? I wouldn't suggest you to start from the middle of the page, for instance. You should start from the beginning of the page, or always from the beginning of info, only for the case study. You should start from the beginning of the page, and for instance, with 2 pages to the left one and right one. And for instance, in the left, it's just an example. In the left one, you could put the title of the name of the place, Shanghai Oil Tank Art, and then a small box text where you could summarize all the most important information about this case. I mean, the location, the size, the date of the construction, the date of the renovation, the names of the designers, the stakeholders, and so on. Just a box where you can summarize all this. It is a kind of an identity card of the single case of study, and it must be formatted in the same way for each case. So you can, when you start a new case, you always find the same information in the same place, and it is easier to recognize the same information. Is that clear now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then you have always, for instance, you could start with a general plan, or maybe with a render, with a bird's eye view, or maybe with a rendering, but try to organize the materials in the same way. So if you start with Shanghai Oil Tank Art with a bird's eye view, okay, you should start for every single case, also for Zhongshan Boda Bund Sales Center, with a bird's eye view and not with a detailed picture like this. So you have the same structure of the same narrative structure of the single cases of study. And this will be much more useful for your purposes and much more understandable for your readers. Okay. Also, the use of the plans. I think that these plans are very interesting, in my opinion. But first of all, they are too small. This is a very general problem of the, I mean, students from China. I don't know why you tended to put a lot of pictures in the same page, and you have very, very small pictures which are not understandable at all. Why do you do so? These pictures, if you keep them so small, are not understandable. You should give them more space, okay?
Okay.
And yeah, it could be good. For instance, you could also try to simplify. This is the real plans. Maybe you could create a very simple sketch on your own, a very simple scheme on your own, which could simplify the structure of the plan in order to explain how the system works. So you have, for each case, you have the original plan been designed by the single designers, and a sketch of yours made by you that contain system of the building and the design choices and so on. So the single cases become comparable. Okay, in very simple terms, you did not just make up until now a real case study analysis. You have just some free texts that are telling about 4 different cases. This is not enough. If you want to do it in a scientific term, you must do something more. You must create a standard that can be repeated for each case.
Okay.
Okay. Then I go to also, yeah, when you make these tables, these are quite interesting. In both cases, both when they are produced starting from someone else analysis or someone else book, and in this case you should declare summary case analysis done by author, source, and you can mention the source. And they are also very useful when they are explaining your own ideas. So in this case, it's just drawn by the author. But when we go to the design proposal, the problem is always the same, because all the picture, the way you are explaining your project is not clear. It's still not clear, because the pictures that you are using are too small. I suppose that in order to create these pictures, you spend a lot of time, and you are using these pictures that probably require days and days of work from you. You are using them very, very small, so they are not understandable. For instance, all these axonometric views that are explaining different layers of the project, in my opinion, should be placed on a single double page. Okay, on a double page where you have the different layers, and they can be understood in a better way. And so here you are using too many pictures in the same page. I invite you to leave more space, especially for the pictures that have been created by you from the original pictures, because I can imagine that if you are using some pictures that come from another book, from another journal, or from other sources, maybe you could use it just as a kind of a reference, so they are small. Okay, just I can understand that you are using it just as a kind of a reference, but if you are producing something on your own, so I mean, it is something original, it is worth to explain it and to show it in the best of the ways. Okay.
Okay. Professor, did you say what is a double page to put the picture?
It is simple. When you open the book like this, you have 2 pages.
Okay.
You can also use a picture that is partially on the left page and partially on the right page. If you have a big drawing, don't press it in the single page.
Okay.
Spread it into pages. Okay, for instance, when you have the general plan, I don't remember. At a certain point, you have the general plan of your work. Sorry, Mingyu, wait. I asked you just 5 minutes because I have to remove my car,
okay.
my wife to exit, and I leave you here. I don't close the communication, so I leave you here just 5 minutes, maybe less,
Okay.
and I come back. Okay.
Okay. See you later. Okay.
Hello, here I am again.
Hi.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yes.
Okay, so coming back to the design part, I think that you have a lot of work also in this case because you make a lot of drawings, but they are, in my opinion, they are too much dispersed, too much scattered along the text. So it is quite hard to understand the real meaning of your project. It took for me a lot of time to understand what you really want to do in this case. And if it has been hard for me, let's imagine how hard it can be for the graduation commission that will see your work just for a hand fist of minutes and not more. So I think that you should try to reconnect more precisely. You have different scales. You have a more urban scale with the master plan of the city, with the general schemes and so on. Then you have a global scale, a global architectural scale, where you see the plan of the entire settlement, and you will need some sections of the entire settlement, not just a plan, and so on. And then you have more, more architectural views where you have these simple cross sections and so on. You should try to put the things together, and also these schematic diagrams all should be more linked one to each other, all these parts, because otherwise we lose every single part. It is all very untied in the text. My final observation is about the bibliography. If I correctly understand, no, I don't understand. No, this is the chapter 8 is the bibliography. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
So this is not the bibliography of chapter 8. You name bibliography chapter 8.
Oh, okay.
Okay. First of all, bibliography is not a chapter. It is bibliography. Okay.
Okay.
But besides this, I don't understand the order of this bibliography, because it is not chronological, because you have 2020, 2000, 2001, and so on. So it is not chronological. And in the other side, it is not an alphabetic order. It seems to me that you are putting the books like they come, as they come. So you don't have an order. And this is a mess. This is not acceptable in a scientific work. Normally, in order to create a bibliography, you have to organize your work in a scientific way. I mean, a bibliography could be in alphabetical order, in chronological order, or maybe with some other orders, but you mean rationale for the organization of your bibliography. What I would like to suggest you to do is that, since these kind of works have got a lot of different disciplines that are contributing to them, because you have books probably of urban design, books that are treating some single cases of industrial renovation, books that are treating problems of theory, books that are treating other kind of problems, historical books, and so on. So you have different kind of texts that you used in order to create your work. I would suggest you to organize your bibliography in a scientific way. I mean, this is a bibliography, and you should have first one. This could be a first chapter of a bibliography, which could be dedicated to some specific problems. For instance, industrial renovation. Then you could have a second topic, which could be dedicated to other problems. Let's say Chinese city and the industrialization. And then a third topic that could be dedicated to some other topics and so on. And in each one of these boxes, you could have the single books and the single text that you use. That must be ordered, I would suggest, in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Hmm?
Okay, I understand. Professor, because we discussed that the chapter has better to be four, and now is maybe.
I'm not saying four. It was just an example. I'm just saying that your chapters are too many in relationship to what you are saying. You don't need such a strong nesting, such a strong separation of the arguments. You should compact your reasoning in much more, and you should try to focus much more on the real interesting part of your work.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes. Professor, can you do an example about how to change the chapter 3?
Chapter 3, let me see what you.
Yeah. You just speak a little, but I think it's.
Yeah, I just need to see again chapter 3. Analysis of industrial heritage in the context of our use.
Yes.
What is not clear to me in this case is that in chapter 3, are you analyzing the case of China, of Chinese deindustrialization, or are you analyzing the deindustrialization in a more global context?
It's analyzed about China.
Okay. In my opinion, what you should do in this case is setting up a moment where your story starts. For instance, I know that, please correct me if I am saying something wrong, because you know China much better than me, of course. But I know that the topic of industrial renovation in China has started to become more and more important, more or less around the year 2000. Okay, because I know that around this year, more or less in that moment, many cities in China, like Beijing, for instance, started to plan some deindustrialization. So they started to remove the most pollutant industries that were in the city center, and to bring them out from the city, in the outskirts of the city. I know, for instance, that the general master plan of Beijing 2005-2020, which was spanning 15 years, was describing the most pollutant factories that were distributed in the city center of Beijing, within the fourth ring road of Beijing. And then it planned a removal of these pollutant industries in the outskirts during the next 15 years. And for instance, the renovation of some very important industries in Beijing, like the Shougang factory, or maybe like the Erpong machinery plant and so on, were the result of this policy in Beijing. When this process started in China, I know that there were, I don't remember exactly the date, but there were some important conventions in China, so important conferences about industrial heritage. So actually, if you explore a little bit more the literature, the Chinese literature, you will find that there is a moment which is a very precise moment between the end of the 90s and the beginning of the first years of the new century, where the sensibility of industrial heritage started to grow up in China. And when they did this, they started to look at the Western experiences, especially in Europe and especially in Italy. Okay, I speak very much about that with some Chinese colleagues.
Yes.
And this is very important because this could be, I mean, the starting point of your story. You don't have to take into account what it happened before, because it is another part of the history. It is a part of the first part of the industries in China. But your topic starts when China decided to apply a new policy about the presence of the industries in the city center, which is exactly the same thing that happened in Europe, and especially in Italy, more or less from the middle of the 70s, because during the 70s, the most important factories in Italy and in Europe started to close, or maybe to remove their premises to other countries or maybe to other places. And we started to face the problem of the former industrial settlements, the renovation of the former industrial settlement. You have studied here. I suppose that you know very well the Lingotto campus of Politecnico. Lingotto campus was exactly a former factory, and the renovation of the factory started at the beginning of the 80s. Okay, that was the magical moment of. So if you compare the history of China from this point of view and the history of Europe, you have a delay of more or less 20 years. Okay, China started to face the same problems 20 years after Europe, but the problems are the same. The only difference is that in China they are bigger, because in China everything is bigger, and so the cities are bigger, the factories are bigger, and so on.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I am sorry, but my time has finished because I have to do another meeting. So if you have a very last question, you can do it.
Professor, I have just the last question about the upload time. Do you have a suggestion about I send the file to you because maybe 30 is the deadline, but it's the weekend.
Yes. I think that you have to work a lot in order to do all the things that I said. And yes, you can upload the thesis. Try to upload the most the very final one. But remember that after the upload, you will have some time to correct your thesis again before the discussion. So you can continue your work also after that time. What is important, since the deadline that you mentioned is the deadline where you have to submit your work to the anti-plagiarism software. What is very important is that all the parts of your thesis, all the chapters of your thesis, the structure of your thesis, and so on are present. And in this case, you can submit your work to the software. After that, you can change something. You can correct something. You can add some pictures. This is not a problem. But the structure of the test and the text should be more or less all present.
Okay.
Okay. And also try, this is a very last suggestion. I think that the titles of your paragraphs in some cases are quite weird. I think that they sound like they have been literally translated from Chinese. And if you translate them in English, they are quite weird. I would suggest you to try, there are some very recurrent expressions that are used in literature. Try to use the official expressions. For instance, this is a major problem for me. You are using a lot of different expressions to say the same thing in your thesis. You are using urban renovation, regeneration, and so on, and many other, requalification, and so on. Please consider that each one of these expressions has got his own story and has got his own meaning, okay? So you cannot use urban renovation, urban regeneration as synonyms, but because they are not definedly. You can use them, you can use both of them, but you should use every single expression saying exactly what it means. If you are using, for instance, about urban requalification, you are speaking mostly about a physical operation, and quite only physical operation. If you are speaking about an urban regeneration, you are speaking about an operation which is partially physical, but partially economical and social, and so on. So I invite you to make up your mind about the right meaning of the terms that you are using, because this is very important in a scientific work.
Okay. So Professor, do you suggest I send you first and then upload?
If you have time, it will be better.
Yeah, I will check. Thank you.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'm very sorry, but I have to close the communication because I have to start the other meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice
If you
day.
have some problems, please write me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Best.